It's a nice rainy day outside to be working in the workshop, and I've just come in this morning. It's the day before Christmas, Christmas Eve, just to tidy up some stuff on the motor, finish off a little bit of stuff we were doing last night, which was underneath the manifold, getting that coolant manifold, I guess, on underneath here, bolting the ITB motor back up. Now I've got those knock sensors in place and they're not fouling on anything. It looks really good. Put a nice clamp and stuff up under there. Just tidied everything up over here. This morning I'm just gonna run our lines now, so our heater hose line, which I've been waiting on some fittings to do. We're into the fun stuff now. It'd be nice to get the hot side off today and get that bolt finished, and then maybe get that back on. We're not going to put the turbo on to put the motor up in. I'll leave the turbo off because we can sit that on quite easily in while the motor's up in. So yeah, let's get stuck into it. Okay, so while we've got the engine still sitting down on the trolley, I thought it would be a good idea to finish filling up the diff oil. So I didn't quite have enough last time to fill it up, so again we use Redline 75-140, best diff oil in the game, trust me. Especially for GTRs, diffs that take so much shock and heat and things like that, stress, that sort of stuff. So I got this little funnel I've made up here, so that's all I use, something basic just to fill it up from the top. Now we've got oil in the diff. What I do for the the diff bung is our nice zinc plated new diff bung. I always use just thread sealant, a little bit around there. You don't want to cover it in it because you'll end up with the sealant going all through the diff, and you don't want that. You just want it on just the start of the thread, just like 3 or 4 threads in. That's all you need. Just make sure there's none on the actual face of it, so there's none going into the diff oil, because you don't want your diff oil to be contaminated. Okay, so it's finally time to fix the coolant lines, or the heater hose line behind underneath the engine here. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to run a -10 stainless steel braided hose from the heater hose outlet here to the heater hose inlet in the back of the water pump. Well, that was a good few hours working on the GTR. We got a lot done. Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm going home to spend time with my family. Good boy. I just went and did oil return hose at the back of the head. I thought it was a bit too tight. You want to make sure all your AN fittings are spot on, especially any build, because oil over a hot turbo or fuel over a hot turbo you don't want that shit. So yeah, I've just redid that back one around the back of the head. It's come out really good now. It's just on a bit better of an angle, I guess. It was a little bit tight before. So I've sort of got the turbo worked out now. Well, the turbo lines, that is, anyway. So I'm gonna run, it's just so tight, and it makes me nervous about how close these things are to wastegates and header pipes and tubes and heat. So I'm running a -6 water supply line just from around the back of the block there. There's a plate which has got plenty of room there, which is really good, that one there. So it'll actually run down as far as where I can get it from the manifold itself. Then at the front is where it gets pretty tight, so it's this one here. So I've got it in heat proof sheathing obviously, and it can be sort of moved away, but it's going to go really tight here. I don't want anything touching, so we want an air gap there, and then it goes into a -690 into the side of the turbo there. So that's our supply. Our return's going to be a little bit easier. Sorry, it's really dark at the moment, but our return will be just out the side here, and I've got plenty of which ways I can go just to run that around the back of the head. So nice and easy. The oil supply, I'm waiting on a couple of fittings. I need some -4 fittings. I've got the OPR, Turbo Smart's new OPR to fit in there, so I'll do a bit of that tomorrow, and I'll do the rest of the coolant line for the turbo. Then I'll start plumbing wastegates
early the next month.
So I thought I'd do something different today and give myself a break from actually fitting parts to the engine. What we're going to do is work on the power steering system. So I've got stock power steering hoses here. There is the supply line. That one there is the return line, low pressure. That's the supply to the reservoir, and then have a high pressure one out of the pump that goes down to the rack, operates the rack. Then I've got a return back up to the reservoir. Okay, so there's 3 lines in total. One's a short one, half-inch hose, just supply. It'll just press on. It's push lock fitting. That'll supply the fluid to the pump. The pump will then turn. Got high pressure out, which needs to be a very good line. I've actually got a call out with NZ hoses tomorrow morning at 7:30, and we're going to make the high pressure hose. What I want to do now is just lay out the supply line. So all we have to do tomorrow is press in that small power steer switch. So Raceworks do these fittings for the power steer lines, and they're actually called bump tube fittings. So we need a M14 and an M16, I believe. What I might do here is, I don't like the look of this. This looks pretty tacky. So this is the alternator charge wire. This is a Frenchie's Performance Garage Mitsubishi alternator, I believe. There you go. He puts a plaque and a number on every single one of his alternators so he can keep track of them. Okay, so I've gone through the wiring, tidied up a fair bit of it, tidied all this end up right up to where it goes up to the battery leads. So that's all brand new now, looks nice and fresh. Looks kind of standard too, which is cool. But what I have done is, where is it? Okay, so I've released the power steering pressure switch from the whole harness. So now instead of having to be mounted at the front, we should be able to sort of mount it around the back or wherever we want to. So I just got back from the hydraulic shop. I went there early this morning to make up these power steering lines. Apologies for not filming all of that, but it was just a pain in the backside, but I'm glad it's sorted now. So proper fabricated power steer lines from the hydraulic shop for supply. So we've got this nice long 90, then it's pressed onto a good high pressure fitting, high pressure hose. That one will go down and under. It'll go across the front where it'll have the power steer pressure switch in it, and then it'll go around this way. That one there, I haven't run it through exactly where it's going to go yet, and then over the diff and then onto the power steering rack. We've then got our return one, which is a Raceworks tube adapter fitting, and 90 straight down underneath the transmission, and then it's got a little 90 here. Then it goes on to this is like a bump tube or a tube fitting, I think they call them, tube adapter fitting, to a JIC or -6. Then it goes in a heat sheathing underneath this side of the front axle, and then it will come out here and we'll shorten that when we need to. So that's the power steering line sorted. Thank fuck for that. That was just a bit of a headache. Okay, so I've got the clutch apart. It's quite easy to pull apart these things. They're very good clutches to work with. This is my first OS Giken clutch, but it's not my first multi-plate clutch. So when you do it, just be extremely careful that there is, these do have an orientation, the plates. So this is your fiber plate and then your clutch disc. They definitely do have a orientation. Look at the fibers, the clutch discs, they've actually got paint on them. They need to be in a certain area or certain position as well. Now that we've got our flywheel and the clutch basket, I guess you call it, in off and ready to go, we use of course none other than ARP stud. Okay, now carefully grab our clutch basket and flywheel. Fuck, it's light. This thing is gonna rev. Now, because this was a new crank, the Kelly's crank, I did put a new dowel pin in there too, so don't forget that. If you do put a new crank in, make sure you put your little pin in the back of it. With ARP stud, do come the link or a website to go to with instructions, and it is quite important to follow those instructions. Again, read the workshop manual and you can't go wrong with one of those things, but I'll go over it for the guys who don't know or they've never done it. When you're doing the flywheel bolts, you just do them up hand tight to start off with. There's no first torque, there's just a last torque, which I believe is like 95 foot-pounds. So it's not overly tight, but it's nice and tight. It's nice and tight. So you want to make sure you're able to hold the motor from turning over, which you should be able to. You should be able to put a bar on the front, get someone to hold it, or once you've got the flywheel up on, you might be able to jam it, which I don't like doing because that's super bad for the teeth if you slip. You do need to use a Loctite or some form of Loctite. As everyone knows, I love the Werf stuff. But the Loctite number is 242, which is just the high strength red stuff. So when you do your Loctite, you want to make sure you get Loctite on the thread where my thumb is, but you want to make sure that there's no Loctite underneath the head of the bolt. You want to make sure that that's nice and clean before you do this. Underneath the head of the bolt, you're going to put a bit of this ARP grease. It's like a black lubricant or a black grease. There's no exact torque. Like 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. You just go in a cross pattern. So if you start here, you're going to go over to there. You start there, you go. So just go opposing and go in a star motion. Pretty simple. Yeah, so there's the instructions there. You don't have to look at them up on your phone. It's got everything including 95 foot-pounds, cross pattern, and just how to put the Loctite on, and make sure you always put grease under the head of the bolt. So before you go around and do up your clutch face or clutch cage bolts, you want to just poke your head in and make sure, if you've got a clutch alignment tool, use it now and just align up everything. It only gets torqued to 13 foot-pounds, but there's a very specific way on how you torque it, and that is super crucial. Never touch these ones here. These are the adjustment bolts for the fingers. Don't undo them. Clutch is all on and bolted up. What we need to do now is put on our Tomei brace for the cross member. So it's pretty cool that these guys make that. I know that Tomei worked with Hollinger back in the day when they had their sequential gearboxes, and also HKS worked with them when they had the old HKS dog box. Everyone knew that box back in the day. It was a ripper gearbox. So this bracket doesn't look like anything's too sort of, yeah, I don't think there's a front or a back or a which way. It looks like it's the same both ways. There's no other brackets on it for exhaust clamps or anything like that, where the exhaust goes on this side, so nothing like that. It looks like we just use M8s. Should be it, and then we can bolt it. Actually, we might bolt it to the gearbox first. That might be easier. Through the side there, they look like M10 by 1.25s, I'd say. So we'll see if we can get some bolts and nuts and washers and bolt him up. By the way, there's the part number for this Tomei, for the Tomei bracket, if you're ever after one. Okay, so I'm still messing around with lots of hoses and wiring looms and bits and pieces, but the clutch is up and on. I'm about to put the Hollinger across, and I'll try and get the engine up in tonight. So the next episode, you'll see the motor will be back in it for good this time, with the gearbox on it. We'll put the tail shaft in it. I'm going to put the one-piece tail shaft back in it, not the two-piece. So I'll go over that with you, and then we'll start to plumbing up all our wastegates, plumbing up everything that needs to be plumbed up while the engine's up in the car. So lots of fun stuff to come up with, guys. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I really appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate everyone watching. It goes a long way, and we thank you very much. Cheers.